Prime Minister Mark Carney has caved to Conservative pressure, rolling out tougher bail and sentencing laws.
Alberta considers back-to-work legislation to end a province-wide teacher strike.
Albertans will vote on new license plates branded with the province's motto, Strong and Free. Hello Canada, it's Friday, October 17th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Isaac Lamoureux.
And I'm Walid Tamtam.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. Prime Minister Mark Carney is pivoting sharply on crime, rolling out a suite of tough-on-crime reforms that many observers say were forced by Conservative pressure and growing public frustration over repeat offenders. Carney's new plan includes reverse onus bail for crimes like auto theft, human trafficking, and organized gang offenses, meaning offenders will have to prove why they should not be detained. He's also moving to end conditional sentences and house arrest for sexual assault convictions and to allow stacked sentencing for multiple violent crimes. The reforms come after months of criticism from opposition parties, police associations, and victims as advocates who have accused the Liberal government of being soft on violent offenders. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has repeatedly linked rising crime and car theft to the Liberals' 2019 bail reforms, calling them a, quote, catch and release disaster. Carney defended his reversal, saying his government is, quote, listening to Canadians' concerns and restoring public safety as a top priority. But critics argue the announcement shows Carney reacting to political optics rather than leading with principle. However, Conservatives are arguing that the announcement shows Carney is reacting to political optics rather than leading with principle. So, Walid, when a government pivots under mounting political pressure like this, is this a sign of the strength of the Conservatives and their tough-on-crime messaging?
Well, Isaac, I think this rings like the carbon tax reversal that Carney made way earlier when he removed the consumer carbon tax. When Tories are consistent on their pressure on a certain issue or policy standpoint, the public eventually catches up, and as soon as the public pressure gets too hot, the Liberals take a half measure. So in the case of the carbon tax, the consumer carbon tax was removed, but an industrial one remains. A half measure from what the Conservatives would have proposed, which is a full scrap of the entire carbon tax itself. Actually, Conservative MP and Shadow Minister for Justice and the Attorney General of Canada issued a statement in what he called this policy reversal a half-baked attempt to copy-paste the Jail Not Bail Act. This, of course, Jail Not Bail Act effectively, from the Conservatives, would repeal the Liberals' Bill C-48 in order to repeal the principle of restraint. So, absolutely, I think that it's public pressure that's driving this direction from the Liberals. It's Conservatives that have funneled and focused that public pressure into this particular issue, talking about the revolving door justice system where repeat offenders are let off on bail far too often, far too easily. And of course, the Tories, as well as Toronto Police Chief, have made it clear that something has to change in Ottawa. Again, I don't think that the Liberals are going all the way to where the Conservatives want to be on the issue, but it does show a sign of strength, like on the carbon tax, that Conservative messaging has taken the public pressure up a few notches and caused at least some change to be happening now. The Alberta government is preparing to introduce back-to-work legislation if the province's massive teacher strike continues into the next legislative session, set to begin October 27th, later this month. More than 51 teachers across Alberta are off the job, closing over 2,500 schools and leaving nearly 750,000 students without regular classes. The strike, now entering its third week, has become one of the largest education walkouts in provincial history. Finance Minister Nate Horner says the negotiations between the Alberta Teachers Association and the government remain, quote, far apart, but insists there is still time for compromise before the legislature reconvenes. Earlier offers rejected by the union would have made Alberta teachers among the highest paid in Western Canada and included the hiring thousands of additional classroom assistants and support staff. The government says the latest offer also included mental health supports for teachers and students, but union leaders argue that classroom conditions and workloads remain untenable. The provincial government says it's committed to restoring stability for families, but critics warn that forcing teachers back could escalate tensions and undermine trust between educators and the province. So Isaac, you're out there in Alberta. What do you make of the strike's effect on students and families thus far? Is the government right to bring back to work legislation now? What do you make of the timing?
Yeah, Walid, obviously, the strike has already had a huge impact with, as you said, roughly 750,000 students out of class for already 3 weeks, and parents having to find childcare substitutions because let's remember, while school is primarily presented as a tool or a vessel for education, it also serves as a daycare. And the province's parent payment program is now offering $30 a day for parents of children aged 12 and under for childcare and tutoring costs, but additional support is available for families of children with complex needs, totaling up to $300 per 5-day school week. And the government is saying that it's redirecting teacher salary dollars to fund those payments. And from what I've seen online, taxpayers are saving around $20 million a day during the strike because teachers aren't being paid. And Finance Minister Nate Horner said the Alberta Teachers Association's latest proposal asked for nearly $2 billion more than the government had budgeted and warned that there's little room to move within the budget. So he has hinted that back to work legislation could be forthcoming in the upcoming parliamentary session, which of course begins on October 27th. But it appears that the teachers are ready to hold taxpayers hostage, remembering that teachers overwhelmingly rejected 2 provincial government settlements, one which was recommended by a mediator, and another which was negotiated and agreed upon by the Teachers' Employer Bargaining Association and the Alberta Teachers Association. Chris Sims, the Alberta director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, highlighted what was in these rejected deals. Of course, teachers refused a package that would have made them the highest paid in Western Canada, with new teachers starting at $71,000 a year, reaching $100,000 yearly after 7 years of experience. And I saw the top end was even more, around $115,000 a year. And the offer, of course, also included hiring 3,000 more teachers, 1,500 more educational assistants, and building 100 more schools. And from what we're seeing with the newest numbers that have come out, either the teachers or the ATA is lying, because based on the numbers that have been revealed, we've heard these teachers complaining about 40 students in their classes, but the numbers don't lie and they do not reflect this in the slightest, because Smith, when speaking at a press conference yesterday, said that 35,162 teachers walked off the job, not including 7,000 substitutes. As for students, her number was 740,000, meaning that there would be 21 students in each class if it was equal across the board. And ATA President Jason Schilling's numbers would have made it even worse because he said it was 51,000 teachers who walked off the job, which would have meant 15 students per class, which is obviously a country mile from 40. So Smith suggested that the real issue isn't class size, but classroom complexity, meaning students with behavioral challenges, disabilities, or they just don't even speak English because their English is their second language. So Smith said that instead of hard class size caps, the government might need to think about how to deploy educational assistance more strategically to meet those challenges. And Smith also reminded Albertans that the previous NDP government spent $2 billion to try and fix classroom sizes, but obviously failed. But for me, Walid, it's still not clear what will satisfy these teachers because they've been offered the moon, in my opinion, and that would have, of course, made them the highest paid in Western Canada with the lowest cost of living. And given the fact that many teachers voted Liberal in the last federal election, I don't see how they can be on their high horse trying to live in a fantasy world where they're the only group of people that aren't affected by the Liberal government's irresponsible immigration levels. So for me, in my opinion, it's time to reap what you sow. Albertans will soon get the chance to vote on new license plate designs, each emblazoned with the province's motto, Strong and Free. The provincial government announced the campaign this week, calling it a way to celebrate Alberta's pride and identity. The online vote will run for 3 weeks, with 8 plate designs in the running. The current plates haven't been changed since 1984, and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has said that and changed quite remarkably since then. So the new license plates vary in design from cattle being herded to oil rigs to beautiful mountain landscapes, and then also some very basic designs. But in each of the designs, as I said, Strong and Free is at the bottom of each version. And of course, Strong and Free can also be found on Alberta's coat of arms in Latin, reading Fortis et Liber. And Strong and Free also appears in Canada's national anthem. Despite this, some left-wing ideologues have criticized this change, like Alberta Federation of Labour President Gil McGowan, who called it a very Trumpian thing to do and a big red flag. But again, Service Alberta Minister Dale Nally referenced that this isn't just about Alberta, but actually has a common association with Canada, does Strong and Free. He said even, in fact, when the King of England delivered his throne speech in Ottawa, he also associated Strong and Free in relation with Canada. So any left-wing ideologues trying to say that this is some sort of political move is not true. And Smith reminded people that, of course, the old plates had the Wild Rose emblem on there. So she joked about that formerly with the Wild Rose Party, that her party was getting some sort of advertising from the license plates, but that's not the case right now. So yeah, the tournament-style voting is taking place between October 15th and November 5, and in the first phase, Albertans can choose between 8 initial designs, which will then be reduced to the top 4, then the top 2, and then, of course, the last license plate will be crowned, and that will be the new license plate in Alberta. Another important thing to add, this implementation is said to only cost between $25,000 and $50,000, and Nally said that no additional budget was provided to him for this. It's all with internal resources. And any Albertans who wish to replace their current plates and designs can pay a voluntary $28 or wait for the renewal period, and it will come at no additional cost. But of course, current plates will remain valid, assuming they're in proper condition. Again, this vote is underway right now, so any Albertans can go and vote on the provincial website right now. But Walid, do you see this as a wise celebration of Alberta pride? And what do you think of the designs? How does it compare to out there in Ontario, for example?
Well, Isaac, I think definitely everything you have from your health card to your license plate are typically wide found around the province and has some sort of role to play in provincial symbolism, even national symbolism for that extent. And I'm not even referring to Alberta separatist sentiment, which is, of course, on the rise. So I guess, since 1984, in that case, it's been a while, probably a time for a little update. I'm much more interested in the fiscal cost here. You said something between $25,000 to $50,000. Well, I'll tell you what happened over here where I am in Ontario. Back in 2020, they tried to redesign the plates, the Doug Ford government, and that ended up costing over $320,000 total to the taxpayers, which was actually $238,000 over the initial budget. Why that happened? Well, there was a number of difficulties around getting the plates out, finding the right design, consultation fees. The overall process itself was expensive. But the funniest part about that was that plate that was designed, that blue on dark blue plate, was not even approved in the end. I mean, it has been in circulation. I believe, according to the government, around about 124,000 license plates are still on the roads as of last year that are blue on blue. But the reason why they weren't continued and they were recalled just months after they were released during COVID, which was because they were unreadable at night due to the visibility defect they have. Of course, license plates typically shine on light during night hours so that police officers and others can observe the license plates while folks are driving after sunset. So it was a big, expensive failure, and now the government is continuing to revert to the old white on blue design that you see across the country in Ontario and places like Nova Scotia, etc. It's a pretty standard design, frankly, so I would not be surprised if Alberta goes for a design based on blue on white with some additional imagery on the side. But we're going back to the old, and that new attempt is being phased out. But I don't think that high taxpayer bill is being reimbursed anytime soon, unfortunately.
Well, Walid, as for the Alberta plates, just to touch on what you mentioned there, they did confirm that it will include reflective technology to improve visibility and meet international standards for counterfeit resistance. But that's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.